Hello everyone and welcome back to Teamfight and Tactics. I am of course ImpetuousPanda, part of the Rising Legends broadcast team, and I'm joined today by a very unique player in terms of his story with TFT. That is of course Alanzq from Poland. Alan, how are you doing?
Hey Panda, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
So I mentioned you're a unique player. I think this comes through many different reasons. You're someone that OG fans of TFT know very well. You used to, grind the game way back in set 1, set 2, set 3. You were among the best players in EMEA when it came to ladder results. There weren't quite tournaments there just yet. You migrated to Legends of Runeterra and have just only recently come back to TFT, but you've come back in a big way, which is why you're being featured here. But before we get into all those details, I want to know more about you, bare bones stuff, personal stuff. Who are you outside of TFT?
I am a lawyer. I graduated law, but outside of the bit of practice I had and working in the job, I didn't do much on top of that. And I'm just a gamer. Like, I'm playing competitively since I am 14, so that's been like 15 years already. The gaming wasn't always as developed as it is now. Back in the days, even when my accomplishment was getting to SWC, my parents didn't let me go, so my team had to go with like a replacement for me because I was too young, and they just was afraid for me to go alone to France. And I think that was the last SWC happening back then. So.
And you mentioned your gaming background always being quite competitive. Was it always strategic as well? What kind of games were you playing? How was your gaming career before, let's say, TFT and Legends of Runeterra?
Originally, mostly MOBA games. Dota, Dota 2, Hon, HOTS. Like, I competed in all of those, mostly at the highest level. I moved on over time to the more single strategic player games, card games, and stuff like that, where you also don't rely as much on other people doing well as much as just yourself.
And when it comes to TFT, I mentioned you started playing right away in set 1 when it released. Had you played Dota Auto Chess? Had you played other Auto Chess games before this? How was your, let's say, onboarding experience on the TFT?
Before TFT, I played Dota Auto Chess. I played in the highest lobbies, Queen lobbies back then. I remember hanging out in the Tabs Twitch channel and just playing lobbies. That was very, very fun back in the days. Even though the meta was pretty much figured, it was still very fun to do. And when the TFT got announced, was in PBE, I grinded hard PBE, was learning. And when it came to life, I grinded to rank 1, and I was sitting there for quite a while. My friend talked me into streaming because he's like, yeah, you're like, people gonna watch you. And that was the time that I got also my Fiverr, because I always wanted to stream, but I couldn't because I'm living in a village where internet was also an issue, and I could never stream until that time. Very recently, I had installed Fiverr, so. Both of those things came together, and it allowed me to stream on top of that.
And how's that experience having to now, did it change your perspective on how you were playing, your mentality, your mindset? Were you more at the beginning, maybe more nervous, more pressure while, you knew people were watching you? Did it not bother you at all? How was doing both streaming and competing at the same time?
Competing wasn't an issue. Streaming was a very new experience that was hard thing to do. I was learning. Chat was teaching me how to stream, essentially, basic things. I was answering question without reading the question. So some people who are just listening, they have no idea what I'm talking about, what I'm answering. Now it's natural that a streamer reads a question and answers it, because some people are most of the people are just listening, not watching. And those kind of basics just happening. And in terms of streaming plus playing at the same time, I don't think it made me much worse. I don't remember now, but it just comes natural over time.
And while you were streaming, you were obviously, as far as I know, rank 1 at certain points in TFT. When did that first happen, and how did that affect your stream? How did it affect the growth? Did you garner more attention, let's say, from other players, from viewers in general?
I got rank 1 right away when it got released. I got to Master, Grandmaster, Challenger as one of the first. I don't remember exactly if I was rank 1 right away, but I was very rank 1 for a very long time global. And after few days, I decided that it's time to stream. There was a leaderboard where you could, the site with leaderboard that was very commonly used. and you can link your Twitch account there. So if people like check the leaderboards, and they can also click your Twitch channel there. So I did it, and like the first day I streamed, I had right away like 50 viewers, and within a week I was already at like 500-600 viewers. So like I didn't exactly had the same pathway as most streaming people, because like obviously when you are like decent at something, people gonna watch you to just get better themselves and like figure out. And especially that was a new set, people didn't know to play. It's like, yeah, and it was a new fresh game, so people wanted to learn.
And what about TFT clicked for you? What was it that made you so good so fast? What about the game drew you in, where there's obviously other games on the market that you could compete in, but what about TFT really took, kind of grabbed your attention and didn't let go for a few sets?
So in comparison to Total Chess or Underlords, I think it's items what made TFT back then outstanding. Like another layer of decision making and RNG that player can control. And that was very interesting because naturally you had only a way, you were controlling only RNG in buying units that were appearing in your shop and putting them on the board in a specific way. Getting items and like itemizing your units was a very interesting way to make the game more interesting.
And now we have, even more layers added on with augments and then, portals and legends this set. So I definitely agree. I think, TFT has really nailed that in terms of adding complexity without making it too inaccessible for newer players as well. Just the right balance. But with TFT, it wasn't always just, a happy story all the way through. You disappeared like the avatar from the face of the earth for a few sets. When did that happen? Why was the reason? And how was the transition into Legends of Runeterra? Another game from Riot, of course.
Multiple layers happened at the same time because there was issues with the bugs, with the balance in the game, and at the same time lore appeared in alpha and the game was so polished and zero bugs, really good balance, and I'm like, I think that Riot will support this game far more because it's standalone game. It's not just like a game in their league client. And I decided to pursue that instead, which obviously I don't regret. I misjudged the decisions that Riot would take and like how the game would develop. And obviously TFT is being just like casino game, like that without money. Like you get the same feeling that you would get in like a casino. Obviously make players more appeal to that type of game than like a game where you just make a deck and you play, because that's very niche for players. I learned that obviously after so much more time. Like back when I wasn't aware of those differences between those two games, even though both of them are technically card games. Just TFT being a draft card game and like lore is more of a constructed card game.
Yeah, more live decision making versus kind of premeditated decision making before the game even starts to some extent. To add some additional context, obviously we met through Legends of Runeterra. I was casting most of Riot's European tournaments for 3 years or so, 2 or 3 years, and you were obviously one of the standout players in EMEA and one of the biggest streamers as well. Throughout all this journey, we'll summarize this since it's obviously a TFT interview. You did end up becoming the first ever Legends of Runeterra world champion. With one of the decks that I gave you. I'll add the note there. And it was really great to see your journey. You've obviously didn't hunt. You were kind of cursed in, let's say, seasonal tournaments compared to GSCs, let's say, in TFT. But when it came to the big moment, you came through. How was that experience for you? Finally having that reward of becoming an authentic, ultimate champion in a game.
It's really hard to describe because that's something that I never experienced, and I could never imagine experiencing. That was just like a very warming feeling of getting rewarded for so much hard work you put into, because often when you put the work and there is no results, there is some bitter taste, but you're playing a game where there is a lot of RNG and it's not always up to you. There is always some RNG involved, and you can just do so much work and not necessarily get results, as you brought up the seasonals part, and just my luck turned out to hit on the worlds part, where I had I low rolled on the seasonals stuff, but I high rolled the worlds, which mattered more obviously for me.
And throughout this journey, while you're playing as Runeterra, this was around from set 4 to set 8, let's say, in terms of TFT time history. Were you also trying out TFT sets as they came out? Did they not really draw you back in, especially set 6 with augments being added to the game? Were you kind of keeping some visibility on TFT's growth?
There were a few sets I played. I don't remember the numbers of those sets. After set 2, the next set I played was the set where there was a mech meta with Victor carry, with like Fizz being like mech plus Victor carry, and that I hit I remember top 2 I think on the EUS, and that's the last time I try-harded ladder. And then I tried multiple sets, got to master, but I didn't play past that much because sets didn't just hit me, and I didn't. The problem I have with TFT is if I can't play other games competitively if I try hard at TFT because of my mindset. I can't play TFT really casually. I need to try to best the best possible way for me available. So I have to try hard. I can't play casually. So.
And TFT is a game that you cannot try hard at the level that you're trying to try hard without committing a lot of time. It is obviously a game that requires a lot of just info management that you can't just kind of do on the side. It has to be a full-time thing. So what propels this decision now to come back to TFT in set 9 and to do it in such a big way? You've been obviously, I think, trying to catch up to some extent with the lost time in terms of just fundamental kind of muscle memory knowledge that other top players have. You put in hundreds of games this set already at the beginning, not so successfully, but now obviously clearly you've kind of gone past that hump and ascended to a very high level of play. What was the reason that you came back?
I mean, the same reason I quit to play lore. Two things happening at the same time. Amazing TFT set. It was really well designed. Arguments seemed better balanced than the previous sets I played, at least to my first feeling. And lore having a really bad expansion for me because it didn't introduce any interesting cards to play around. So I didn't have really much of a decision. Oh, do I play this or do I play that? Because it's for me either one. I can't really play both at the same time. So I decided to switch back to TFT. And if they're gonna keep doing such a good job on TFT, I might see just permanently switching back to TFT because again the game went in a great direction.
Was part of the announcements around TFT's growth with, for example, the Vegas land in December and just the general plans that you can see from Riot in terms of their commitment and investment to TFT scene, was that part of the idea as well? I know you're someone that is talented at video games, but also has, I think, a very good understanding of real-world implications of your career and your streaming career as well. How much of this is kind of future-oriented?
I mean, obviously, I am a man that's just living off the idea of EV. If there is a good EV of the game, of the competitive scene, and I like the game, I'm gonna obviously play this over the game that has lower EV, aside of the fun part. Assuming both games give me as much fun, right? Yes, so the tournaments they announced definitely took a part of my decision.
And how was your mindset coming to TFT now and committing to it full time? I know, briefly we were climbing, let's say at this similar rate. You had 200 games, hadn't made it to Masters yet. I was thinking, how can it be? I think Alan's, a very good player, but this changed drastically over.
I was so bad.
Over a week.
I was so bad.
It kind of clicked for you.
First of all, I didn't look into stats at all. I was picking stuff that completely had really bad stats. I was overpicking arguments that just give you items instead of real combat arguments. My move, my scouting came in after some time, got improved. My positioning was so sloppy. It's still sloppy. My APM is that's something after hundreds of games. It's still not good. I'm trying to improve it every game. That's the to do first thing now on my list, to improve the APM while positioning within the scouting, because I think that's my weakest part. And yeah, I was just not using stats. And after I just started looking at the arguments and thinking about those and about comps, what want to use which arguments more, and when I am having my items, what to avoid picking, really made a big difference in top 4ing most the games where otherwise I would have bottom.
Despite this slow start, let's say, to your climb, players, very well-known players from Poland especially, like Lelouch and Travis, I could tell from talking to them and seeing kind of their general feelings publicly facing on Twitch and on Twitter that they had a lot of belief in you and a lot of belief in your kind of experience with TFT way back in set 1, set 2, this kind of raw talent you seem to have, and they knew that eventually you pulled through. And you did very quickly. I think a week later, I came back from vacation and I saw you, top 20 EU West from like being hard stuck diamond to suddenly this huge jump. How did that feel for you? Suddenly having this breakthrough. You're a player that has achieved a lot already, but I imagine that it was a big satisfaction for you.
So it's like, imagine you are going into let's give it a comparison to Dota. You're jumping to the game after like 5-year break, for example, and you're playing a person that plays constantly for 5 years, mid, and they're just crushing you. Like, it's just like, I know it's like, it's not only mechanical, because most people don't consider TFT as a mechanical game, but it is, like, especially positioning and late game. Between your top 1, top 2, or top 4, there is just like positioning, how fast can you reposition, like how many units for the certain pool of players, and then like decisions, like decision making. Like, people have that expertise that I didn't, because they played so much more with the arguments, with the units. Like, I played like 3 sets for quite some time, and now that was a long time ago. So I just needed to sit down, and it's not even that raw talent, but it's just like my mindset and working hard on improving. Like, I was sitting, and after playing whole day, I was watching VODs for 2-3 hours before bed, and analyzing stuff from the CN and NA mainly regions.
I think you mentioned mechanics as well. Obviously, it has a big impact with APM, but I think it's also just the mental mechanics, the speed at which you make decisions, the speed at which these decisions are just intuitive and kind of mental muscle memory. I think is a big part that you had to catch up on, because players have, despite sets being different, of course, players have this things they can carry over in terms of conceptual stuff. They know from set 6, set 7, set 8, they can carry on to set 9, and it speeds up the process in which they kind of relearn the game. For you, it was a longer journey because of all this missed time, but I think you finally made it to this point now. Of course, we're interviewing you because you qualified to GSC number 2 through the Open Qualifier. How was the Open Qualifier experience? Was it very similar to the ladder? Was it different? Were you nervous?
No, I mean, I think at this point, like, if you compete for such a long time, you don't get nervous at the smaller events. I think, like, I would get only nervous at like the literally like top cut of the worlds type of where it would matter. Like, it actually, the emotions could matter there, but like after competing for 15 years in the various tournaments across the time, I think it's just like I'm past the point of being nervous in the tournaments. In terms of my experience in the GSC qualifiers, it was good. I feel like it was pretty smooth. Like, as expected, I was playing against mostly GM lobbies and like some challenger players, but it was quite easy. Like, despite the trolling I did in some games, it still wasn't like a really challenging experience.
And coming into this GSC tournament, you've obviously been someone that has competed at a high level before. You have this experience, despite it being mostly in other games. With ladder, you've been pretty much on average top 10 or so, top 20 on EUS the last month or so. So you have put in the reps, and you've proven you're at this level. It's not just a fluke that you climbed and high rolled. You're at this level right now. Coming to GSC, what are your expectations, your ambitions for this tournament, and maybe for the entirety of this set? What is the ultimate goal for you?
Improve. Like, this set I'm treating as a improvement time. I don't expect any results. I need to get back first in the form, because especially in the APM, and like decision making in time, rolling down like the high amount of the gold, 70 plus in one round, and pivoting full boards, because that requires like not only APM but decision making, as you mentioned. Like, so this is the time to improve, and from the next set I'll try hard.
Next set then, long term, is it, the chance that you want to become a world champion in 2 Riot games? Hasn't happened yet, as far as I know.
Yeah, definitely, that's something that I would love to achieve.
And I don't know if
a goal.
I don't know if you followed the EMEA in the last few World Championships. Not the best results, so maybe, Alan, you're the chance for us to redeem ourselves. You've been working, I mentioned before, with Lelouch and Travis, I think, very closely. Seems to be, at least to my understanding, a bit of a friendship there. How has that experience been? Did it help you get to this level? Did it help you have this chance to contrast your opinions with other top players?
Definitely at the first, like when you are so clueless, like any insight helps essentially, because like I've not, like when you start getting back to the game, or like when you are mid learning, like insight from players who played such a long time and have already good results back into set, you have some like you can put some reliability on them, and you can rely on them, yeah, and their opinion, so you can improve faster. That definitely helps.
Was this kind of a two-sided relationship where Lelouch and Travis were kind of setting you up to then climb to a high level, then have, let's say, one more very, very talented Polish player to kind of rise up to the whole level in Poland, do you think?
Oh, I think I'm the wrong person to ask about that, but I think they like from the feeling I have, they want me to do well. I don't know if that's because of the nostalgia that like I used to be the best, and they want me to be the best again and like just perform. Like again, I think that I'm not the right person to ask that. And like it's not like we talked about it. Like our hanging out doesn't look necessarily like a studying group. It's more like hanging out, just playing, making fun of each other on the Discord, than essentially studying. It's not essentially that sort of stuff that probably other players do.
Got you. Have you been following Poland's national TFT scene at all? Ultraliga is one of the strongest brands when it comes to TRCs in EMEA. They've been running it for a long time. It's a LAN event, great production value, really well organized as far as I've seen. You tried to make it into Ultraliga at the very start of this set. Obviously, you had a lot to catch up on.
I just failed. The players were too good, and I was too bad to the game to even like have a shot. Obviously.
For next season, is this a goal for you?
We'll see. Maybe.
And with Poland's players overall, how do you feel? Have you been watching in past few sets their level of play at all? We've had Worlds participants. Obviously, Lelouch won set 7 EMEA finals, went to Worlds. We had Royce in set 6. How do you feel Poland is doing overall?
I was I had the pleasure to do watch parties for the Ultraliga for the most part, and the level is very high. I feel like the players after the initial, like they are good at the start of the set when they are playing for the qualify, and they're like at the start when they are playing fresh. But I feel like there is a good amount of the players that fall off after some time because they don't practice. They don't go for improvement. Maybe there is no time, people working, studying. Obviously there are like various reasons, but over time I can see the level of the play going a bit down, or it's or maybe it stays in the same place while
Stagnant.
Other players are improving. Yeah, some of players are stagnant, but the rest of them is improving, which makes the players stagnant look like they are not like they're just worse. Yeah.
We talked about your competition and the kind of the competitive side of your story, not so much the streaming and the content creation side. Obviously, you've been streaming for a long time. In Runeterra, regularly you had 1,000+ viewers, which is, I think, a big success for a game like Runeterra. Moving to TFT, that's taken a drop. Obviously, you're building back up your brand when it comes to TFT. Talk me through joining Team Liquid as a streamer. Talk me through the whole kind of streaming journey outside of the competitive side.
That was a really cool experience because back in the days, like, it goes back even to Artifact, because I don't think I would ever end up in the Liquid if not my relationship with the Hyped, who was back in the days in the Liquid. And like I made a deck in the Artifact, constructed deck, that I coached Hyped on, and he brought it to the various tournaments and crushed every single one. And like we just like had like, and I was playing in Hyped drafts every week. It was like a fun time when the Artifact was a live game.
It was.
And then we played TFT, and like he hit me up that Liquid is looking for like players for the TFT, so he suggested me, and like since I was streaming already, I was top 1, so I was from EU. I don't know if they were looking for EU especially players, so it was pretty easy pickup for them, and it was a great opportunity for me.
And how has streaming been with TFT now? As you were learning, did you feel kind of more vulnerable, where you weren't a complete master at the game already? You had to kind of learn and streaming this process to other people, to your viewers. How was that feeling this last month?
I feel like it helps. Like when you're relearning the game, filtering bad backseating and good backseating is very hard job, but it's definitely helpful. Once you get reasonably decent at the game and you are able to filter those things, Streaming is, again, like when you stream the game for such a long time, it doesn't impact me at all. That like, I'll just ban someone. That's fine. Like if someone annoys me. Like after, like at the start when you're streaming, you're afraid to ban anyone. You don't know how people will react to that. Like you don't want to be like that hard ruling king with the iron fist. Like now, hell no, perma.
And
Bye.
outside of just your viewers, in terms of your public perception from players, for example, I think you mentioned it with Lucian, with Travis, but overall, I think you're a name that everyone from back in the day recognizes and respects. And I think from my experience talking to many pro players, every time you've come up as a name, everyone has said, "Yo, they're very happy to see you back, very happy to see you finding success." How does this feel to you? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, definitely. The more good players there are in the region, the better it is for the remaining players of the pool. Because obviously, if you are the best and there is a huge gap, how are you going to improve? Like you need to have a reasonable level of the field to compete against to get better. Because like you can't really improve at the game if there is no challenge thrown at you, right?
And this is, I think, a big part of the reason I talked in many of these interviews with players why I think EMEA has been more stagnant the last few sets. It's because the region being so separate between different countries, the top players don't really exchange as much information, don't really challenge each other as much, or have that same growth possibility like we do, or like they have in North America and in China, for example. So I think part of that is very similar to this discussion that we're having here. So hopefully that'll change. Hopefully you can, at least on the Polish side, spearfront that a little bit. Talking about playstyle, though, we haven't really mentioned at all. What are your ideas about TFT in terms of your own playstyle, the things that have worked for you the last month, kind of very generally speaking, let's say?
So far, like there are a few strategies. Obviously, reroll, tempo, fast 9. Like for me, it was working just tempo play and just play for the win streak and play for the saving HP early, because there are so many spots where if you try to play lost streak, you just get bad matchmaking at the end and you go bottom. So there, you just eliminate the RNG factor of the matchmaking and try to squeeze top fours in the games where you don't high roll, and the games where you high roll, you just go for first, and like that's the way to climb. Just try to save the spots where it's really hard to save, and try to go 5th, 4th, 6th, where you can't salvage, like it's hard to salvage the game. And whenever you have the high roll spot, you should improve to that you every time you are in the spot where you should get first, you get first, and you don't miss opportunity to, because then it's really bad. You should always be able to squeeze the first when you're supposed to get first from the high roll spot, in terms of arguments, items, or units you receive early.
And through this very intensive learning period, the last month and a half since the set's release, has there been any kind of eureka breakthrough moment for you? Was it more just a gradual learning and acquiring different concepts? Was there anything that surprised you on ladder from different players or their play styles that made you change the way you saw the game? Or overall, you think it was just kind of very small things?
Very small things, like certain arguments for certain comps. Like obviously, like when you look at for example of Gifts of the Fallen, a really good argument, but not for all the comps. Like for example, it's not a really bad argument for the Sorks, because that's the comp about blowing out in like a series of casts, like at the same time, and just blowing whole boards out, so it doesn't do anything for you. But it's amazing for like when you are playing like duo carry, let's say Kai'Sa Yasuo that has sustain, and those are the units that stay alive until the end, and they can utilize those stats very well.
Got you. I think that's all I have for you, Alan. Thank you so much for your time. Getting to know you a bit more about your insight and your journey. I think it's a very unique one, and almost a Cinderella story, coming back and improving so quickly. I think myself and many top players are very excited to see what you do at GSC number 2 this weekend. Do you have anyone you want to shout out, anyone you want to thank in terms of making it this far in your esports career, both as a player and as a streamer?
Again, thanks for having me, Panda. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, shout out to my girlfriend, Caroline, that she's so patient with me spending so much time in front of PC, because I know it's not hard. It's not. I mean, it is hard. Not hard. It is not easy. And the whole community that supports me. That's really heartwarming.
Right. Thanks so much, Alan, for your time.
Thank you.